Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad through captivity and slavery and are in their enemies' lands and being oppressed by their enemies. Greetings. Greetings to those who are not of the 12 tribes of Jacob, but would like to be grafted in to the nation that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel has chosen. Greetings. Greetings to those that have nothing to do with religion and are pretty much fed up with everything they're seeing on the planet and would like to see truth and righteousness reign. Greetings. Greetings to those in the chat and all that are there. Greetings. And double blessings on those who are in the healthcare field, risking their lives in the time when disease has been let loose on the public to save people. Double blessings on those who are driving heavy equipment trucks in dangerous places to help people be fed and to bring heavy equipment to places like Indonesia, where there was a major earthquake yesterday and many people died, and they're looking for heavy equipment to lift rubble off of people. The people bringing that equipment, blessings upon them. Blessings also upon those people who scoop up garbage for a living when nobody cares. But if they were to let that garbage pile up, everybody would care. And they're risking their lives in this time of COVID to pick up garbage. And they're not getting paid what they should. Greetings. Again, greetings to everyone in the chat. We have been studying the book of Revelation. And as we study the book of Revelation, we have gone through, at this point, we have already been through the 7 churches. And we have been through the 7 seals. Believe it or not. You believe how fast that's gone by? So we did the 7 churches and the 7 seals, didn't we? Now we're in the 7 trumpets. 7 trumpets. Now, as we talked about before, the 7 churches and the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets have a rhythm where they're moving together. Okay? They don't necessarily move at exactly the same time, but they're moving together in a rhythm. Okay? So that you can get an idea of what's going on with the 7 trumpets by looking at the 7 seals and by looking at the 7 churches. And of course, as we talk about the book of Revelation, we understand a couple of basic things that I'd like to go over right here. Number 1, the book of Revelation is basically a compilation, listen carefully now, a compilation of messages that were given to Israelite prophets and repeated again to an Israelite prophet named Yochanan, who in English we call him John. And this book of Revelation is called Revelation, the revelation of the Messiah, whose real name is Yahweh Shai, which means Yah exists to save. Yahweh Shai, Yah, our Shai. Our is off the order of Ahaya, which means the same thing. I exist. Yahweh means Yah exists, period. I exist, or Yah exists. And Yahweh Shai, which is his son, has his name in him, and it says Yahweh Shai. Yah exists, Shai, to save. Yah exists to save. Why? Because he came to save his people from their sins. He came not but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And the book of Revelation is to reveal things about the Messiah. And the major things to be revealed about the Messiah is his return and the events leading up to his return that affect his people. That is why Christians will never understand fully the book of Revelation. They fully will never get it because it's for Israelite people to understand and for the Israelite man to share with the earth. We're going to read more, but we're going to talk more about that today. Also, with that understanding, as we studied chapter 1 of the book of Revelation, we understood that Messiah was showing this through his angel to John. Remember what he said, the revelation of Messiah, Yahushua, which Yah gave unto him to show unto his servants, that is Yah's servants, things which must shortly come to pass. And the Bible says, Revelation chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, and he sent and signified this message by his angel unto his servant John, who bear record of the word of the Most High and of the testimony of Yahushua the Messiah. And when he got this testimony, we noticed that Messiah was giving him this testimony from a sanctuary. He looked after he heard Messiah's voice, which sounds like a trumpet. Messiah's voice has different sounds, but let me give you the three sounds of Messiah's voice. It's a trumpet. It's like the sound of many waters, and it's a human voice. Those are the three sounds that represent Messiah in the Bible. A trumpet, the sound of many waters, and a human voice. In the book of Revelation, you see all three. Okay? So whenever you hear that, whenever you hear somebody's voice sound like the sound of many waters, that's Messiah. Or a trumpet, that's Messiah. Okay? Or if he says who he is, of course, it's Messiah. So you saw, John heard the trumpet voice, and he turned and he saw 7 golden candlesticks. And he saw a man dressed in the priest's uniform. That was Messiah. In what we call the holy place of the third heavens sanctuary. The holy place is where the Israelite priests would go on a daily basis when they were in the land, interceding for the children of Israel, 2 sacrifices a day. Not including the sacrifice individuals would bring for their individual situations. Once a year, in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, that same high priest, Aaron's children, will go into the most holy place, where the Ark of the Covenant was and is, and where the Father's glory would be. And the priest in Aaron's day would go in there once a year, and he had to make sure that he confessed the sins of his breaking the covenant and killed an animal with blood. And that for the people of the nation of Israel, they would all confess the sins of breaking the covenant. You see, brother, when we say confess your sins, let me just make sure you understand. Yes, there are certain things that we know very well we have done, right? Like, for example, David knew very well that he had Bathsheba's husband killed to cover up the adulterous affair that he had with Bathsheba and to cover up the fact that he got her pregnant. He knew that sin. But no matter what sin you commit, yes, you must confess that individual sin, as David had to. But any sin we commit is breaking the covenant. The covenant is one. The first part of the covenant, the first word, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Any breaking of that covenant, whether you steal, whether you commit adultery, whether you lie, you done broke the first one and you broke all of them. So everyone that has sinned, and the Bible says all have sinned, we've all broken the covenant of Yah. So in that most holy place is the covenant, and the priest, the high priest, will go in there after having him confess his sin and bring the blood of the animal for him and for the nation. And the Bible says they would cleanse the sanctuary. Why would the sanctuary need to be cleansed? Because every day when the priest is in the holy place, and they're killing the animals twice a day, people are confessing sin for the nation. It's covering the blood of the dead animals is covering the nation, just the nation. And every day those sins in the spirit is transferred to the most holy place. And so at the end of the year, the Most High decided that all of those sins that have been transferred from the most holy place are going to come from the most holy place and be placed in the spirit on what the Bible calls a scapegoat. So that the sins, in effect, are being taken off the children of Israel through the blood of an innocent lamb and put in the sanctuary, and then taken out the sanctuary and placed on the head of a scapegoat. So that eventually the sins come off of Israel and onto the scapegoat, and Israel is cleansed from its sin. This was a sign on the earth that is now taking place in the third heaven. So Messiah in the book of Revelation is shown in the first apartment. And then, of course, as we have seen, he moved into the most holy place to cleanse the heavenly sanctuary, which is the 10th month, the 7th day of the month in the Hebrew calendar. And the preceding of that cleansing is the blowing of trumpets on the first day of the 7th month. It's not a feast. People call it the Feast of Trumpets. This is erroneous. There was no such thing as a Feast of Trumpets. The trumpets that were blown, every time you see trumpets in the Bible that's being blown, it's warning. It's warning to the Israelite people. It's warning to the Israelite people that something's coming. Sometimes the trumpet's blowing when they were in the wilderness, it was time to pack up and go. Sometimes the trumpet's blowing when the enemy was approaching Jerusalem. There was always a warning for the children of Israel. So the trumpets that were being blown the first day of the 7th month were a warning that the 10th day was coming, and you need to get yourself ready to confess your sins of breaking the covenant. That's what that was about. With no feast. But 5 days after the 10th, which is on the 15th day, biggest party of the year, which is appropriate, isn't it? On the 15th day of the 7th month, biggest party of the year. That's the Feast of Tabernacles. That's the Feast of Ingathering. That is where they bring the palm branches and they make booths out of them. And they celebrate the fact that they used to have to travel to the wilderness to get to the promised land, but now they was home and they were going to be home forever. That is the sign of the return of the Son of Man. Okay? So we studied all that. And now it's time for the trumpets. The blowing of trumpets is a warning. It's a warning to the Israelites. About what? Let's take a look. Let's look first. Revelation. We studied this last week. We're just kind of reviewing, actually, because we did this last week. Somebody in the chat, I didn't see who, I'm sorry, but somebody in the chat asked about marriage. I have done, ministry has done marriage lessons. Definitely have done marriage lessons. So what I would do, who is, I forgot, is Devin. Sorry, Devin. So what I would say, Devin, leave a comment in this video and ask the same question, and I will give you the link to the marriage lessons that we have done. We have done lessons on marriage for sure. Okay, I will give you the link to the marriage lessons so you can study that. Okay, we have done definitely done deep studies on marriage, definitely. So I will definitely do that for you by the grace of the Most High. So we studied and the 7 seals, and then the 7th seal happened in chapter 8. So now we begin with the first trumpet. And again, what I said to you last week, which I'm reviewing right now, we're talking about how the trumpets are used as warning signals to the Israelite people. They're warning to the Israelite people. Okay? And remember the order: to the Jew first and also to the Greek. To the Jew first and also to the Greek. Okay, let me show you that, just in case you didn't read it for yourself. Let me show you Romans. Romans, let's see, chapter 1. Let's read it's in several places in Romans, but let's just look at chapter 1 just for the example. Romans chapter 1, and let's look at the gospel, the definition of the gospel that's in Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1, I'm going to read from verse 15 for a little context. Romans chapter 1 from from verse 14 down to verse 17. Okay, from verse 14 down to verse 17, Romans chapter 1. The Apostle Paul writes to the Romans, I am a debtor, both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So, as much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Messiah. For it, that is the gospel, is the power of Yah unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Why is that? Because the Most High has only chosen one people ever in the history of this planet after the flood. After the flood. Prior to the flood, he had people that he chose, right? He chose Adam, Seth, Enoch, Methuselah, right? All of that crew, Lamech, Noah, right? He had people that he chose prior to the flood. But after the flood, he chose Abraham. Then he chose Abraham's seed, the promised seed, Yeshua or Isaac. Then he chose Jacob, and he changed Jacob's name to Israel. And he chose Israel's children, the only people he said he's revealed himself to on the whole planet Earth and everything in history. Okay, the only people. And so when he says to the Jew first, things from Yah must first be revealed to his chosen people, and then his chosen people will give it to the Gentiles, not the other way around. Not the other way around. Okay? Which is why you see children of Israel, Hebrew here, from the tribe of Benjamin, saying, I'm going to preach the gospel to you Gentiles in Rome. This Hebrew Paul from the tribe of Benjamin, an Israelite, was sent to preach the gospel to the Gentiles in Rome. That the Gentiles that believe in the Hebrew Messiah of the line of the tribe of Judah, would be grafted in to the commonwealth of the nation of Israel, the scattered nation. It has not changed. To the Jew first. So you want to understand the 7 trumpets, ask a Hebrew who has repented of his sin and recognizes who he is, repented of his sin and recognizes who he is. The true Hebrews today are mostly brown people. Brown people whose ancestors had been in slavery, according to the Bible. We're going to read. And that's why, that's the riddle of it, you see. The brown people who have been in slavery are the ones that the world, the people of the earth, particularly the people that are in charge right now, would least suspect of being the chosen ones of the Most High Yah. The only ones that could receive his true message and bring it to them. You can see the dilemma. How many people would believe from the sons of Yafet, the Europeans that run this planet, that their way of salvation is not through white Jesus? It's through the Hebrew man that he had in chains. How many people would believe that? And yet it's true. Notice again, verse 17. After he says to the Jew first and also to the Greek, he says, and this is the punchline of the whole thing. For therein, that is in the gospel of Messiah, therein, in the gospel of Messiah, therein is the righteousness of Yah revealed from faith to faith. That's the key right there. The righteousness of Yah is revealed. Why is that important? Yah's righteousness has been questioned, doubted, and stamped on by his enemy, the devil. He has brought deception and lies against the Creator. So the righteousness of Yah must be revealed for him to be vindicated. For his character of perfect righteousness to be vindicated. So he sends his spirit through his son, who paid the penalty of the sins of his people, that through his people, his righteous character would be vindicated. Brethren, I say it all the time because the words teach me. At the end, truth and righteousness are going to win. That's the end. That's the bottom line. At the end of this whole thing, when this whole thing is over, truth and right. Don't listen to the TV. Don't listen to the news media. Don't listen to these Christian churches. At the end, truth and righteousness are going to win. And anybody that's in truth and righteousness will win with them. And here he says, Yah's righteousness, the gospel is to reveal Yah's righteousness, to have it revealed through his chosen people first, and then to the Greeks and the Gentiles. Okay? So here, the trumpets are blowing, giving a warning message. What's going on here? We saw the 7 churches, the message to the 7 churches. We saw the 7 seals, which make up the book of life, which seal the book of life, which Messiah is unsealing, because the inhabitants in that book of life are going to make up the kingdom, his kingdom. They're going to make up the citizens, the populace of his kingdom. And he's unsealing the book. He was given the book by his father, and only for him. Remember, we read it. Only he was worthy to open it because he's going to be the king. If you're not going to be the king, you can't open the book. It's not your kingdom. It's Messiah's kingdom that Father gave him. Daniel chapter 7 we studied, and Revelation chapter 5 we studied. It's Father giving Messiah, his son, a kingdom. Okay? And the inhabitants of the kingdom are written in the book of life. Messiah is unsealing the book. And when the book is fully unsealed, and now we just finished, he's opened the 6th seal, as we know. We're waiting for the last one to drop, which is going to drop very shortly. He's opened 6 of the 7. And the last one's about to drop. Look, you can see what's going on the earth right now. Look around you. What's happening? Don't you see it's winding up? Don't you see it's going crazy right now? Don't you see how corrupt everything is? You see, people talk about Donald Trump, right? People talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not the problem. I'm not saying I support him. I'm just telling you he's not the problem. Donald Trump is a result of the problem. Did you hear what I said? Donald Trump is not the problem. Donald Trump is a result of the problem. And you keep hearing all these people saying, that thing on the Capitol is not what represents us. That's not who we are. That's a bunch of garbage. That's exactly who we are. When you took all the ingredients and made the American system that we now have, pop, that's what spit out. That's what spit out. That's the result of who we are. And people don't want to receive that. And that's common for the last days. Nobody's willing to receive the truth. Nobody's willing to receive the truth about themselves, much less repent of their sins and the sins of their fathers. Nobody's willing to do that. So they can't receive the truth. So they'll say stuff like, this is not who we are as America. Yes, it is exactly who we are. It's exactly who we are. It's the result of who you are. Okay? You drink enough wine, guess what's going to happen? You drink enough wine, right? What's going to happen when you drink too much wine? You're going to get drunk. You may not be drunk the first sip, the first little glass. You're not going to be drunk. But you keep drinking too much of it, and you can't stand upright. Like, they got some drink, right, that tastes so sweet you think it's Kool-Aid until you done drink too much of it. That's America. The wine of Babylon has been drunk for a long time. And now America is drunk. She's drunk. And she's wondering, this is not who we are? Yes, it is. It's exactly who you are. You just don't want to receive it. It's exactly who you are. Okay? That's the whole thing. That's the whole ball of wax in a nutshell right there. Whole thing. Nobody wants to admit who they are. What it really is about. People lie, and it becomes what the Bible calls willful ignorance. And you know what's dangerous about willful ignorance? Eventually you start to believe the crap that you're pushing. Eventually you start to believe it. That's when you're done. See, at first you push garbage, television station, all these they know they're pushing garbage. They're willfully ignorant. These people, they know they're in the wrong. But after a while, after many decades of doing it, they start to think, oh no, maybe we were right after all. Maybe we were right from the beginning. That's when the devil has you hook, line, and sinker. That's why it talks about America as a country that looks like a lamb and speaks like a dragon. So these seven trumpets, Revelation chapter 8, these seven trumpets. Let's begin at verse 2 because that's where the seven trumpets begin. We talked about this last week. Again, we're still reviewing, believe it or not. But we go to verse 2. Notice what it says. And I saw seven angels which stood before Yah, and to them were given seven trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which is before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before Yah out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Let's stop right here. We talked about this last week. So if you want more detail than I'm about to give you, look at last week's lesson because we went into detail about this. But let me tell you. So the trumpets were sounded. And they said the angel took incense from off the golden altar. Let me explain what that golden altar is. So there were two altars in the sanctuary system in Israel. Two altars. There's one that was mentioned in the fifth seal. It was mentioned in the fifth seal in chapter 6, where it says, in Revelation chapter 6, in the fifth seal, when it says, and he opened the fifth seal. Where is it? And he opened the fifth seal, and I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of Yah and for the testimony which they held. The souls of them under the altar. That's an altar of sacrifice. There was an altar of sacrifice. So you had a small building, a small thing that had two compartments, two apartments or compartments. And right outside of that, there was this altar, a big square altar. That's where they would kill the sacrificial animals for sin. The altar had horns on four corners, and it was made out of brass. And they would kill the animal there. They would put his blood in basins, and they would burn the animal on that altar. Okay? Had to be a male of the first year of either a goat or a ram or a bullock of the first year, or even sometimes a heifer. They put that on there also, a female cow sometimes. But they burned it on that altar, and they took the blood of it and brought it inside. Confess the sins of the people every day. Similar to the Passover, where the blood of that animal was over the doorpost and the destroying angel passed over the children of Israel. Well, it's similar to that, so that every day sin is, forgiven. It's not imputed because of the sacrifice twice a day. That's the altar of sacrifice. Inside, though, when you go inside that first apartment, there were furniture in there. There was a table that was covered in pure gold. On that table were 12 loaves of bread that had to be made fresh daily. That would represent the 12 tribes of Israel. That was on one side. On the other side, opposite of that, there were 7 golden candlesticks, representing the 7 spirits of the Most High upon the nation of Israel. And then when you walk a little further, there was a very thick door. It's really a curtain originally, but in heaven is a door in the third heaven. And right outside that door, there's a little small altar. This one is all gold. And it also has 4 horns on the corners, but this one not brass. It's all gold. And on that altar, every day, incense is being burned. It's a special mixture of incense that only the priest can make. If anybody else was to make this incense in Israel, they would put to death. So they would put this incense, this special incense, and it would continually burn it. And there was a slit at the top of the door, and the incense would go up and go through the slit. And whenever that once a year time came for the priest to go into that place, he would also take a censer and he put incense on it and he carried in there. And the incense represented the prayers of the saints, the prayers of the nation. So what we saw here is that situation. There was incense. Angel put some incense on his censer, and he was going to bring it in there. But instead of bringing it into the Most High to have their prayers go to the Most High, he threw his censer back to the earth. In other words, the prayers were rejected. Prayers get rejected, brother. The prayers were rejected. So you're dealing now, and this is right before the trumpets are sounding, right? So he's telling you up front, these part of the trumpets, and we saw the 7 churches. And Most High said, like with Ephesus, I know your works. That's the white horse. You're going forth conquering and to conquer with my message of righteousness to the Israelites and then to the Gentiles. And I know you hate them Nicolaitans with a false doctrine. And I know you hate them that claim the apostles and they're liars. So you saw that kind of move all through the 7 churches. Then we saw the 7 seals. Here, we're seeing the same time frame of people whose prayers are not being heard. People who are faking it. People whose prayers are being rejected. And we're going to go through it. Their prayers are rejected. And you could tell who they are. Just look at the 7 churches. It tells you warnings about each church. The warning ones, those are the ones that didn't get the memo and decide to go what he's warning against. For example, in the first church is those that follow the doctrine of Nicolaitans, those that claim to be apostles and are not, that are liars. The second church was red horse, and Diocletian was trying to kill off the Israelites, and it was judgment on Diocletian and his kingdom, the Roman Empire. It was falling. Very easy, right? It's not complicated. Okay. And the people that were praying, that represented them, people that was backing the killing of the Israelites, I'm not hearing you. This thing is serious, brethren. We don't all serve the same God. I know they're teaching that in the world out here. I know they're teaching that. All the churches serve the same God. No. If everybody served the same God, right? Think of it logically. Think of it logically for a second. If all of us serve the same God, right, on this earth, why would the Most High have to say, thou shalt have no other gods before me? Why would that be the first commandment? If there was no such thing as serving another God, why would he give to the Israelites a covenant where the very first commandment said, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, which brought you out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. If there was no other options, why would he say that? Why would he say that? As the first commandment. Because there are other options. There are false gods. And he has said to us that he has only revealed himself to Jacob's children. So, and he says, all the gods of the nations are idols. Psalm 96, all the gods of the nations are idols. So no, we don't all serve the same God. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is to the children of Israel. The ones that were enslaved, it's their God. I'd watch out for them. Okay? Exactly. Psalm 147 says the same thing. The last 2 verses. He's only revealed his judgments to Jacob and Israel. That's it. No other people. Only people to ever hear his voice as a nation is Israel. 1 million people. See, when Muhammad went to the mountain and claimed to get stuff from Allah, he had no witnesses that was there that heard that. There were no witnesses. And the one person that stood up for him was his wife, who was 20 years older than him, Khadijah. And she bore witness. She said it must be true. And that's how it started to spread. But with Israel, not so. 1 million, more than 1 million people, including 600,000 grown men, heard it at the same time. The Bible recalls they all heard it, and they sent their leaders to say, listen, we hear his voice and we're scared. You go talk to him. We believe he exists, man. Go talk to him. So it was 1 million plus witnesses. It was 600,000 men. And women outnumber men. So there's at least 600,000 women. You're talking about 1 million too out there. And they heard, all of them, the voice of the Father. All of them heard it. That's 1 million witnesses. There were Israelite witnesses. John the Baptist, baptism of the Messiah, that heard the voice that said, this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. Israelite witnesses. This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. Saw the dove of the Spirit fall on him. Witnesses. This wasn't just one man coming down out of a mountain hole claiming whatever he claiming. No. Millions of witnesses from one people. So now, 7 trumpets. Cast the prayers back to the earth. They don't want to hear from you. See, if you're scared of that, you should be. It's a terrible thing to not be heard by the Most High. It's a terrible thing. What requirement is there for us to be heard by the Most High? He hears those of a contrite heart, those of a repentant spirit, those that come to him and say, you are the righteous one. Those that take his side and say, I'm the sinner. I broke your covenant. You're the righteous one. Please give me of your righteousness that I could be like you. He hears those. He hears those. And you know the thing about that? The people that are truly repentant will say those words. The people not don't even care to do that. They don't care. They're laughing at me right now. We'll see who laughs last, though. Because it's going crazy out here. It's not. It's going crazy out here. It's going crazy out here. Every day, police shooting another brother somewhere. People still stacked up in prison for nonviolent crimes. Imagine this now. Marijuana is legal in most of America right now. And you got brothers still in jail from the 90s for distributing marijuana. They're even selling stocks in marijuana now. And brothers are still in jail, Israelites, for selling marijuana. Yeah, I'm being conservative, though. I'm being conservative. Well over 1 million, 1.2 million at least. And they all were witnesses. I'm being conservative. I don't want to exaggerate, you know. But we know there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of witnesses out there that day. Okay, so the world is going crazy. Disease is being let loose on people to kill them. You know, the most people being killed by COVID, right, is brown people. Brown people, Mexican brown people, El Salvadorian brown people, black brown people. Brown people mostly the ones getting killed on a high level. And media is telling you, well, it's because they don't have the health care. The thing was designed to kill us. You know why? It's not a card, brother. The Caucasian population, every population on planet Earth, every population, go look this up for yourself. Every population on planet Earth, in order to survive as a population, they need to produce 2.1 children per woman. Every population. In order to survive, you got to produce 2.1 children per woman. The populations of Europe, the original population of the children of Yafet are below that. All of them. Finland, Norway, the United States, the UK, Germany, France, Italy. Every original population of those lands are below replacement. They're below, like 2.1 is what you need to survive. They say if you go below 1.9, there's no coming back. And most of them are below 1.7. Some of them are like 1.3. Like they're on the way to extinction without nobody doing nothing to them. And they're making all kinds of excuses because the women want to work, because they want careers, and that's what it is. No, man, it's prophecy. The sons of Yafet rule for 2,000 years, and their rule is coming to an end. And now, in Africa, the average of the whole continent is 5 per woman. Some of the nations are like 7. And then here in the United States, the black population, even with all the stuff we're going through, we're still 2.5, something like that. And the Spanish are like 3 point something. The brown people are Spanish 3 point something. So why is it killing us? It's very obvious, isn't it? You've been hearing all these rich people like Bill Gates talking about reducing the population. They're not talking about reducing the population of them. They're not talking about that. No. This stuff is designed to kill us. Not just us, though. Also, poor white people. You know, the poor white people are designed to get killed too. You know why? Because in their mind, the eugenic mind, right? The Hitler style eugenic mind, they want the upper crust, right? They believe the people that are rich are the smarter ones. So they want, this has been going on for a while. They want to represent that seed. So if you poor and they call you white trash, they want to get rid of you too. Why do you think they allow this stuff to happen in the Capitol? They control all of the poor white people that they've been controlling for 400 years. They just don't realize it. And then they bring them out and they know who you are. The trap was laid and they know who you are. And now they're gonna arrest you, and some of y'all gonna get killed. Watch, they're gonna be marching on capitals. You're gonna see some of them get killed. A lot of them gonna get killed. They're gonna arrest a lot more of them. It's already happening, brother. This stuff is already here, man. Yep, this stuff already here. So we at the end. This is not. Somebody quoted on one of my videos said, "I think we might be in the Book of Revelation." You think? You think? We in the sixth seal. The seven seals, seven church, seven trumpets about to blow. It's almost over. It's almost over. 144,000 are here. They're being prepared. They're not going to be, you're not going to see them march down the street all in one. That's not how it's going to work. You're going to see them on Mount Zion together. You're going to see them on the Sea of Glass together. But during this earth, they scattered. The children of Israel are scattered into the four corners of the earth, scattered. And that's how the 144,000 are scattered to the four corners of the earth. Wait, let me show you this. See, the original deliverance of the children of Israel, as we know, were out of Egypt, right? Watch this. Jeremiah chapter 23. And now Jeremiah 23 is powerful because it's a sign of the Messiah. It's talking about Messiah being Yahweh, our righteousness, right? But there's more. There's more. When you look at past that, watch this before we come back here to the seven trumpets. There's more. Watch. Jeremiah chapter 23, right? I'm gonna start at verse 5 because I just got to read that out of respect. We start at verse 5, but we're really going down to verse 8. Watch, listen carefully now. Jeremiah 23, 5 to 8. Listen carefully now, especially verse 8. Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will raise unto David, that's Israelite, a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. I told you righteousness is going to win. In his days, Judah. That's where most of you West African slaves come from. Judah. In his days, Judah shall be saved. That's where most of your Sudanese, Somalians, Eritreans, Ethiopians now mixed with Judah. In his days, Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name whereby he shall be called. Remember, Messiah said, I'm going to get a new name? Yahweh, our righteousness. Yahweh, Asadak. Watch now. Watch verse 7. Very careful. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh. Watch this. That they shall no more say, Yahweh liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Wait a minute. What's he going to say? What's he saying? He said, you're not going to be mentioning that no more. So why? He took us out of Egypt. The Passover is a memorial to that. But he said, there's going to be eclipsed by something. What? Verse 8. But Yahweh liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country and from all the countries whither I have driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. See, the first time all of our fathers came out of one place. They came out of Egypt. They came out of one place. This time, we're coming out of all four corners of the earth. Why? Because we've been scattered into four corners of the earth. That's why. And so the 144,000 are in the four corners of the earth, scattered. And when Messiah returns, we'll be brought back to our own land. When Messiah returns, we'll be brought back to our own land. Praise Yah. See? That's why. Also Isaiah 11 says the same thing. He set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left. See, the first time he took them out of Egypt. But this time the Bible says I'm going to take them from where? Let's take a look at it. This is Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11. Second witness. Isaiah chapter 11. What does it say? Verse 11. Isaiah 11:11. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left. See, the first time he took them out of Egypt, they were coming from one place. But this time, though, scattered throughout the whole earth. Watch. Which from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Ammon and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth and bring them into their own land. Messiah did that. Okay, that's why this time is not the same. It's going to be like Egypt in that there's going to be 7 plagues falling, except in the 7 plagues before fell just on Egypt, right? There was 10 plagues on Egypt, and the last 7 was just on Egyptians. This time, the 7 last plagues are going to hit the entire planet. Why? Because his people are scattered into the entire planet. And remember, the plagues that he gave to Egypt were to do what? To tell Pharaoh what? Let my people go. That was the message, wasn't it? Let my people go. It's the same message, except now it's in the 4 corners of the earth. Let my people go. And what did Pharaoh say? I will not let Israel go. Why? Because they're exploiting us. Just like Pharaoh was exploiting the Israelites there to build them pyramids. Y'all like them pyramids that are still there today. They're built by Israelites. And he was exploiting them. So he said, no, I'm not going to let them go. And remember what the Father said? For this cause I have raised thee up, that I will show forth my glory. For this cause I will raise thee up. The children of Japhet that are now exploiting us. See, that was a Hamite. The Hamites were ruling the earth at that time. The Hamites were ruling the earth at that time. The Babylonians, the Mizraim, which the European renamed Egypt, they were ruling the world. The Ethiopian Cushites, they were ruling the earth at that time. The Assyrians, but now, and the Assyrians really were Semites, but they were controlled by Hamites. But that's another story. But they were ruling the earth at this time. That was their turn. And as we mentioned, the last Hamitic king to rule the world was Nebuchadnezzar. After Nebuchadnezzar, it was the children of Japhet's turn. And for the last 2,000 years, it's been their turn. And right now, they're the ones running things on the planet, the children of Japhet. Okay? They're running stuff. That's biblical. And just like the warning went to Pharaoh, now it's going to the children of Japhet. And just like Pharaoh, they're going to say, no, why would we going to let y'all go? For what? We're making too much money off their backs. No, y'all making too much money. You better go make that brick. Okay? You better make that brick. That's what's going on. And now the plagues are going to hit the planet, the whole planet, as we're going to see when we read Revelation chapter 16. Okay, so now we're in Revelation chapter 8. So now 7 trumpets, first trumpet blow, Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. Well, let's go verse 6. We read that. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. And the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Now, we talked about this. When you see what? When you see hail and fire mingled with blood, what is that according to the scriptures? What is that according to the scriptures? Now, before we go and look it up again, like we did last time, before we look at that, you see that the first church, Ephesus, went forth conquering the conquer with the white horse, tried them with, say, the apostles and found them liars, hated the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which is the fake doctrine of grace that the Christians push. Fake doctrine of grace. The true grace is a power given from the Father's Spirit to overcome sin. It's a gift you can't earn. It's perfect righteousness given to you as a gift. The fake grace says there is no law and I'm just forgiven. That's the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, turning the grace of Yah into lasciviousness. The first church hated that. Besides that, I hate it too. So that was here. But these people are not having their prayers heard. So who are these? Psalm 18. Everything we give, we try to give with just the word. So, I mean, it's not me, it's the word. I'm not saying it, it's the word saying it. People try to act like I'm saying it. I'm not saying nothing. I'm just regurgitating what the Father has shown us in the word. Let's look at the word. Psalm 18. Of course, we're not going to read the whole psalm. We actually don't need to. 50 verses, though it is powerful. I'm going to tell you, it is powerful. But watch what it says here. Beginning at verse 1. I'm going to read from verse 1. I'm going to read from verse 1 down to verse 17. From 1 to 18. Maybe 19. It's powerful, though. I will love thee, O Yahweh, my strength. Yahweh is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My most high, my strength, in whom I will trust. My buckler and the horn of my salvation and my high tower. I will call upon Yahweh, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. So he's talking about being delivered by the Most High from his enemies. Of course, this is David, the Israelite king, speaking. Let's continue. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. In my distress, I called upon Yahweh and cried unto my Most High. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. Why was he wroth? Because his servant, his repentant servant, was being distressed by his enemy. Then there went up a smoke out of his nostrils. Fire came out of his mouth and devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down. Darkness was under his feet, and he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his pavilion, he made darkness his secret place, His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. Watch. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire, just like we just saw with the first trumpet. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yahweh also thundered in the heavens. The highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. So his voice represented by thunders, lightnings, earthquake, and hailstones and coals of fire upon those that he's delivering his people from. Just like one of the plagues in Egypt was hailstones and coals of fire. Let's continue. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Yahweh, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. He sent from above, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but Yahweh was my stay. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me because he delighted in me. David, Israel, Revelation. So now, in that first church in the first century, the enemies of that gospel were receiving the wrath of Yah. And will receive it. First trumpet warning. Enemies of the gospel, first century, second century, wrath of the Most High. Enemies of the true gospel. Okay. Revelation chapter 8. Let's go to the second angel. And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. Second angel, great mountain burning with fire, cast down. What happened? Smyrna, Diocletian, 10 days of death to Israelite martyrs. He wanted to rid the earth of all Israelites. in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was coming to a conclusion. If you recall, historically speaking, Caligula actually set fire to Rome and blamed the Israelites on it. He blamed the Israelites. He didn't care if they were followers of the way or not. Any circumcised man that was an Israelite was blamed. Okay, and it wasn't the first time. Even during the Bible times, Caesar declared all Israelites had to leave Rome. And that's why Aquila and Priscilla ended up leaving. There was attacks on Israelites. They're blaming Israelites for everything. Okay, whenever there was a problem, it was the Israelites. So here, in the second angel, great mountain burned with fire. Let's take a look. Jeremiah chapter 52. Jeremiah chapter 52. Jeremiah 52. Actually, I'm sorry, Jeremiah 51. Sorry, Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah chapter 51, beginning, and he's talking about Babylon here, which is the regular, real, literal Babylon, the Hamitic kingdom, the last, as I mentioned before, the last Hamitic kingdom. Now we're dealing in these last days in the book of Revelation. It talks about spiritual Babylon, which is run by the children of Yafet. The Caucasian man rules. He rules in the United States. He rules in Europe. He rules in Australia. He rules in South Africa. He has ruled all over the earth. He has come to these lands from Europe and taken over and killed everybody that didn't follow him. That's history, right? So it's his turn. It's not like it's just his turn. It's his turn. But his turn is coming to an end. It's like a Hamitic king, turn coming to an end. And the next one is Shem's children, which are Israelites. Okay, again, Jeremiah chapter 51, beginning at verse 24, reading verse 24 and 25. And I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion. In your sight, saith Yahweh. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain. He calls Babylon a destroying mountain, saith Yahweh, which destroyeth all the earth. I will stretch out my hand upon thee and roll thee down from the rocks and make thee what? A burnt mountain. So the kingdom that's getting destroyed is a burnt mountain. So the pagan Roman Empire was declining until it was no more. It was being destroyed. That's why he called it what? A burnt mountain. So then you had Diocletian. Then you had a couple of emperors after him. Then you had Constantine. And Constantine tried to keep the empire in any way he could. First, he tried to convert and call himself what? A Christian, a Jesus freak. I'm going to become a Christian, he said. And that's where Christianity really began. The pagan Christianity we have, that's where it began, with Constantine. And what did he do? He had his seat in Rome, and then he went into what we now call Turkey, where the 7 churches were, and he created another seat, in a city that he named Constantinople after himself. But then later on, as we're going to discover when we get to the 5th trumpet, that was taken over, and the name was changed to Istanbul, because there was no, after Constantine, the Roman Empire was no more. There became now the Holy Roman Empire. The Roman Empire as a pagan power was done. And now the Holy Roman Empire, the religious power, took its place. And we're going to read more about that. We get to the fifth trumpet. Okay, so here, but this burnt mountain is the Roman Empire in its decline. Okay, attacking y'all's people in its decline. And when it declined, them people wasn't getting no repentance. That was it. Done. Okay? Done. All right. Third angel. Revelation chapter 8, verse 10. Watch this. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Now, watch this now. Watch this. Bitter water, right? Let's compare that. Look at Gospel of John. Gospel of John. Gospel of John. Gospel of John chapter 7. Watch Gospel of John chapter 7. Watch what the Messiah says here. Gospel of John chapter 7, beginning at verse 37 and going down to verse 39. In the last day, that great day of the feast, Yahushua stood and cried, saying, if any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. But this spake he of the Spirit, which they that believe on him should receive, for the Holy Ghost was not yet given, because Yahushua was not yet glorified. So he hadn't dispersed it the way he was going to later. But he said, come unto me and drink. And the water he was talking about was the Spirit of the Father that was going to be dispersed through Messiah. That's sweet water. That's healing water. But the bitter water comes from another spirit. The bitter water comes from another spirit. Remember, this is the third trumpet, which we know follows what? The third church. What did we see in the third church? Balaam. Remember Balaam, the compromiser? Balaam, the sellout? Balaam that helped Balak teach the children of Israel to commit fornication, to eat things sacrificed to idols. That one, Pergamos, that's what you're dealing with here. That's another spirit. Let's get more details about that one. Where are we going to get the details from? The prophets, of course. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 29. Deuteronomy. Now, we all know as Israelites, most of us know as Israelites, Deuteronomy 28. Right? Because the curses of Deuteronomy 28 was opened our eyes to realize who we were. Right? So for many decades, before we knew this truth, before we were woken up in these last days of this wicked kingdom, before we knew this truth, we would often wonder, why us? Why are we getting strung up from trees and our private parts cut out? Why us? Why everybody else could come to this country in America? They can come here from Korea. They can come here from Japan. They can come here from any place else and get ahead. They can come here from India, Afghanistan. They can come here from Bangladesh, and they can get ahead. And we still the tail. Why us? Why is it that we get all the heroin and cocaine in our neighborhood? Why is it that all the guns are with us? Why is it that all our brothers getting shot in the street? Why us? Well, Deuteronomy 28 showed us, didn't it? Deuteronomy 28 made it clear, didn't it? So we know that. If you're Israelite, you know that one. But many people don't read chapter 29. Chapter 29 teaches us a lot. Let's look at chapter 29 in Deuteronomy chapter 29, Deuteronomy 29, and this will help explain the third trumpet, along with the third church and the third seal. The third seal, the first seal was white, the second seal was red, the third seal, the horse was what? Black. Not black like skin, black like spiritual darkness. Black. Deuteronomy chapter 29. Let's read this. Watch this very carefully, brethren. After he gave the warning about us going into slavery by ships in chapter 28, watch 29. These are the words of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moses, beginning of verse 1. Verse 1. These are the words of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Oreb. So they were in Moab's land right before they were going to cross over, and they had already made the covenant that is the main covenant, which we know to be the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, which the whole nation heard, right? So he's making another covenant with them as they're crossing into, before they get to go into the land. Now, we know they didn't make it this time, but this is right when they get ready to go in there, okay? And verse 2, and Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, ye have seen all that Yahweh did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh and unto all his servants and unto all his land. The great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and great miracles. Yet Yahweh hath not given you a heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day. And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. So this was when Moses was about to die. I have to correct myself. They were about to go in. Moses was about to be put to death in the mountain in Moab, and Joshua was going to lead them in. So now Moses said, and I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxing old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxing old upon thy foot. Ye have not eaten bread, neither have ye drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might know that I am Yahweh, your most high. And when ye came into the place, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us unto battle, and we smote them. And we took their land and gave it for an inheritance unto the Reubenites, unto the Gadites, and to half the tribe of Manasseh. Keep therefore the words of this covenant and do them, that you may prosper in all that you do. Stand this day, all of you, before Yahweh your Most High, your captains of your tribes, your elders, and your officers with all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and thy stranger that is in thy camp, stranger that dwelleth among you. That's you Gentiles that are grafted in. And the hewer of wood and the drawer of water. That's the Gentiles that's going to be captured later. That's going to be our servants. Isaiah 14. There's two different groups of Gentiles. There's Gentiles that are going to be grafted in and get all the promises as Abraham's children. And then there's going to be Gentiles that are going to come in late. And they're going to be for 1,000 years our servants, the hewers of wood, drawers of water. That thou shouldest enter into covenant with Yahweh thy Most High, into his oath, which Yahweh thy Most High maketh with thee unto this day, that he may establish thee today for a people unto himself, and that he may be unto thee a God, as he has said unto thee, as he has sworn unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Neither with you only do I make this covenant and this oath, but with him that standeth here with us this day before Yahweh our Most High. Also with him that is not here with us this day. What do you mean by that? For ye know how we have dwelt in the land of Egypt, and how we came through the nations which were passed by, and ye have seen their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them. Lest there should be among you man or woman or family or tribe whose heart turneth away this day from Yahweh our Most High, to go and serve the gods of these nations. See, we don't all serve the same God. Lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and what? There should be among you a root that is from the gods of the nations that beareth what? Gall and wormwood. Didn't we just read about wormwood in the third trumpet that made the waters bitter? And here, wormwood is talked about with regard to the gods of the other nations. Didn't we also read in the third church about the compromise with Balaam and the selling out for money? Didn't we read about that? Gall and wormwood, false gods among the Israelites, causing them to turn from the only true God, Yahweh. And it come to pass, when he heareth the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of my heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. Didn't I tell you Babylon was drunk? And this is what happened. See, brethren, Israelites have a God. It's not the gods of the nations. It's not Allah. It's not white Jesus. It's not the Lord. His name is Yah, short for Yahweh. His son's name is Yahweh Shai, of the nation of Israel, of the 12 tribes of the bloodline of Jacob. They have a God. He's the only true God. And anything else is gall and wormwood, which is why you saw in the third trumpet gall and wormwood, because now he said they walk in the imagination of their own heart. Now remember what the word said. If you add to his word or you take away from his word, you do not have his word anymore. So we could be reading the Bible and I could add something to it. I could say this should have been in there and I could add something to it. That's not his word anymore. Or we could be reading the Bible and I could say this should be taken out and I could take it out. That's not his word anymore. Or we can read the Bible and we can come up with a version that changes a doctrine. That's not his word anymore. It's the imagination of men's hearts. He said, do not add to my word or diminish from my word, that you may keep my word. So here, gall and wormwood is doing all of that. It's a different God. They add and take away from his word. It's bitter. It's not sweet anymore. It's a lie. It's not his spirit anymore. It's another spirit. Continue. See, brethren, one of the signs of the Most High people is they are concerned with receiving Yah's spirit for the purpose, the singular purpose of bringing glory to Yah by obedience to his covenant, to be brought into harmony with him, as all the prophets were, as Abraham and Isaac and Jacob were, as Isaiah and Jeremiah and Zechariah were, to be in harmony with his spirit. He said to Noah, you have found grace in my sight, because my spirit shall not always strive with man. We want to be one with him, and we want to reflect his perfect righteousness. That is the gospel. That is the good news. To allow his spirit to dwell in us. That's the promise. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and 7. That is the promise, that he will dwell in us and walk in us with his spirit. See, the works will come as a result of a connection with his spirit. And isn't that what Ezekiel 36 tells us when it says, I will pour my spirit on you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them? He said, first, I'm going to pour my spirit on you. Isn't the Bible say, Father seeketh them to worship him, that want to worship him in what? Spirit and truth. Didn't Messiah tell our brothers, the apostles, tarry at Jerusalem until you be endowed with power from on high, and then you shall be witnesses unto me? Spirit first. Conviction is really an answer to a spirit call. When you are convicted and you come to the Father, what you are doing is responding to the call of the Father's Spirit. That's what you're doing. That's what conviction is. And unfortunately, most people reject that. Reject it. That's why only a remnant is going to be saved. Don't have to be that way. It's just the way it is, though. Power, money, pride will stop people from receiving or hearing or heeding the call of that convicting power of the Father's Spirit. That's the sad thing. Deuteronomy chapter 29. Let's continue. Verse 19, and it come to pass when he heareth the words of this curse that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of my heart, to add wickedness to thirst. Yahweh will not spare him. Yahweh will not spare him. Prayers not being heard. Yahweh will not spare him. But then the anger of Yahweh and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him, and Yahweh shall blot out his name from under heaven. Isn't that what happened to our people? That's what Deuteronomy 28 is about, see? And then Deuteronomy 30, which we're not going to read the whole thing, but we got to get a good ending to this, right? That's Deuteronomy 30. So wait, Yahweh shall separate him unto the evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the law, so that the generation to come of your children that shall rise up after you, and the stranger that shall come from a far land shall say, when they see the plagues of that land and the sickness which Yahweh hath laid upon it, that the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt and burning. It is not sown, nor beareth, nor any grass groweth. Remember, it said it burned up the green grass. The worm burned up the grass. Remember that? Like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which Yahweh overthrew in his anger and his wrath. I'm going to skip down so we can read the promise after that, okay? Deuteronomy chapter 29. Let's see. I'm going to start at verse 27. Let's go down to verse 27. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against this land, that is the land of the Israelites, to bring upon it all the curses that are written in this book. And Yahweh rooted them out of their land in anger and in wrath and in great indignation, and cast them into another land, as it is this day. And the secret things, watch this, I love this verse here. The secret things belong unto Yahweh our Most High. But those things which are revealed belong unto us and to our children forever, that we may do it all the words of this law. See, there's things that the Bible reveals, and there's things it doesn't reveal. Don't look for the things it doesn't reveal. Know for yourself the things it does reveal. Those things belong to us. The secret things belong to the Most High. And we will find out those things in the kingdom. But there are things that, and many people are looking at all kinds of other books and have not read these 66 ones here, have not really read it through the 66 ones. Read these 66 books through. These are things that have been revealed to us. Read them. Hear them. Those are ours. The things not revealed don't belong to us. They belong to Yah. Okay? Watch the promise of chapter 30. I'm going to read only like the first 10 verses of chapter 30. And it shall come to pass. It shall come to pass. Future prophecy. It shall come to pass. Deuteronomy 30, verse 1. It shall come to pass. And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither Yahweh thy most high have driven thee. Wait, when all these things come upon thee, the blessing and the curse. See the curse, Deuteronomy 28, Deuteronomy 29. The blessing is the first part of 28. All of these things come upon our fathers, and we'll call them to mind among all the nations whether we have been driven. So we're in the four corners of the earth, right? And now we're calling to mind all of these things, the blessing that came upon us, the curses that have come upon us. And now the answer to why the question why, we see it. And that in and of itself is a prophetic utterance. It's coming from prophecy. That is prophetic. We're supposed to awaken. That's what's showing us here, the awakening. It shows us in other places too, but we're in Deuteronomy right now. So it said, you're going to call them to mind among all the nations whether Yahweh thy most high have driven thee, and verse 2, shall return unto Yahweh thy most high, and shall obey his voice, according to all that I command thee, thou and thy children with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that then, when you call these things to mind and you awaken and you return to your God, Israel, yours, that then Yahweh thy most high will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations where the Yahweh thy most high have scattered thee. So he's going to gather us back to our land, as the word promised us in other places that we have already read. Jeremiah and Isaiah, we already read. Okay? Messiah going to bring us that. Messiah going to do that. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahweh thy most high gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. That's the return. Messiah is going to bring the return. As we're going to continue reading the book of Revelation, Messiah is going to be the one. He's going to be the lightning rod. He's going to be the thing that brings this thing to pass. And before he comes, he's going to pour his spirit on 144,000, which are going to give the witness, bear witness. Like John the Baptist bore witness before Messiah came. We're going to bear witness. The final witness before this Babylonian system is annihilated. Messiah is going to annihilate it. And we're going to be with him. Those of us that are repentant and return to Yah. Praise the Most High. Okay, let's go back. So that was the third trumpet, the wormwood. That was the third trumpet, the wormwood. Okay, that was worshiping another God. That was the compromise. That was after the imagination of your heart. That's what Christianity is. Christianity is not biblical. I know that sounds crazy to some of y'all, right? Christianity is not biblical. Neither is Judaism. It's not biblical. They use, listen carefully, they use part of the Bible for their belief system. Let me say that again. Christianity and Judaism use part of the Bible for their belief system. Judaism uses the first 5 books. Christianity uses the New Testament. That's what they do. That's what they lean on as part of the Bible. They do not take the whole loaf of bread. They use part of it for their purposes. Okay, so they're not biblical because they're not following the whole Bible. They don't even believe the whole Bible is, worth listening to. They just don't. Judaism believes in the first 5 books of Moses, and the Christians say, the New Testament is thing, and the Old Testament is done away with, and there's no law, and it's the New Testament now. It's white Jesus. We can raise our hand and trust in white Jesus, and we're under grace. That's the Christian way. So it's not biblical in the sense that it's following the whole Bible. They take part of the Bible and use it to justify their religious beliefs. They just take part of it. Okay? They don't take the whole Bible. In fact, very few people on the earth take the whole Bible. Very few people on the earth take the whole Bible. Anyway, so now back to the 7 trumpets. We did 3. 4th one. Now, before we go into the 4th one, let's review for a second. It's got a couple minutes. We'll probably review this again tomorrow. But just as a review, the 4th church, Thyatira. Remember that? That's where Jezebel was. Jezebel. a woman that ruled Israelites. Jezebel, a woman that ruled over Israelites. That was the fourth church, Thyatira. Remember the fourth horse? It was pale, represented death. No life in it because it's completely anathema to Yah. Started off going with wormwood and end up with pale death. Fourth church, fourth seal. Here we are now in the fourth trumpet. Let's take a look. Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for the third part of it, and the night likewise. So when it's talking about the sun and the moon not shining, that is a representation of spiritual darkness. Now, spiritual darkness was brought upon the earth with the rise of the Roman Catholic Church. With the rise of the Roman Catholic Church, as you recall, we talked about this before, the Israelites were banished from Europe and placed into slavery. The Roman Catholic Church officially became the entity in the 6th century. Listen carefully. The Roman Catholic Church officially became the entity when the French king said that the Bishop of Rome was the corrector of all heretics. At that point, in 508 AD, you had the beginnings of what the established Roman Empire turned to the Holy Roman Empire. In 30 years, they had to fight some heathens that wasn't with the program, get rid of the Ostrogoths, Visigoths, and a few, the Heruli, and then the established church was Roman Catholic worldwide, which means they would go everywhere. And if you didn't convert, they would kill you. They would go away to India. They would go into Africa. If you didn't convert, they'd kill you or banish you to an island as a slave. That was the 6th century. That was the beginning of it. In the 7th century, here come old Muhammad, the 7th century, with his wife Khadijah. Muhammad could not read or write. His wife Khadijah could. His wife Khadijah was influenced by the Roman Catholic Church, which had spread all over the place. And she bore witness to the conversion of this new religion that he called Islam, which apparently in Arabic means total submission to God. What God? Well, it's not Israelites. I can tell you that because he don't call Arab prophets. He calls Israelite prophets. But at that time, because it's darkness, the Israelite prophets were already being scattered. And in fact, the Israelites were being converted to Christianity and Islam. There's your stone and your wood. You will go worship gods of wood and stone. The wood is the wooden cross of the Catholic Church and the Christianity, the wooden cross. The stone is Mecca. The stone is Mecca. They bow down to a spot in Saudi Arabia that's made of stone that they call Mecca. You serve gods of wood and stone. That was the beginning of Islam in the 7th century. And in the 8th century, guess what came next? The Khazarians of Eastern Europe decided to get into this religion that they called Judaism. They kept their Kabbalah, which is a book of magic, and they added to it the first 5 books of Moses and said they were converted Israelites. 8th century. 6th, 7th, and 8th. Christianity, Islam, Judaism. From that point, they all started competing with each other. We're going to talk more about that in the 5th trumpet. But today, we're talking about the 4th one. So the 4th one is Rome's rise. Darkness come upon the face of the earth because now there's no Israelites teaching anything about Yah now. That's gone. They're scattered. And that's when darkness comes upon the earth. And the rise of the pagan Christian church was established. 4th church, Jezebel, a woman representing a church, a woman, a pagan woman ruling over Israelites. Okay. Verse 13. Let me read 12 again, 12 and 13. And the 4th angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for the third part of it. The night likewise. The light likewise. I mean, it just made everything dark, black. death. And I beheld and heard an angel fly through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, and woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels, which are yet to sound. Okay, so now we've gotten to the fourth trumpet. I'm going to start the fifth one by the grace of the Most High on the morrow. We'll start at 11 o'clock talking about the fifth angel and the sixth angel. We're going to spend some time there because, of course, the sixth one is where we are right now. And that's a long one. The sixth one we got to spend a lot of time because there's a lot of events happening, as we can see on the earth right now, but a lot of events happening under the sixth trumpet. So we're going to talk about that. But the fifth one's important also because that, as we talked about, if the fourth one was the Catholic Church, and what I told you what came next, I'm not going to say it again, but I told you what came next. We're going to study that tomorrow. What came next? Okay, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. In the meantime, may the Most High Yahweh bless you, Nora, and keep you, and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, and lift up his countenance upon you, his countenance of light and righteousness, and give you peace. And may you choose the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as your trust. In the name of his son, Messiah, Yahushua. Amen. Shalom.